Well, Mitchell Matthews Media, it's been a long time coming, but now I'm going to explain why I like the new Ben 10 reboot. Hey guys and gals, it's GrandOwlGaming here with the long-awaited Ben 10 2016 if you're from the UK, 2017 if you're from the US reboot. As you all know, I'm going to be splitting this into 3 parts, in this case talking about animation, characters, plot, and then finally my final verdict and hopes for the future. As they say over at Reboot, it's juice and jam time. So to start us off with, the first part of this video is in this case the animation. Now a lot of people, at least that I knew, had canned this show from the very beginning because of its animation, saying it reminded them of Teen Titans Go and the Powerpuff Girls. And in this case, I can't really, state an opinion here, because the people that I talked to in this case were longtime fans of the Ben 10 original series, going from that all the way to Omniverse, which was the latest installment before the reboot. With this being the case, it would kind of make sense that they would start getting Teen Titans Go vibes. Me on the other hand, I actually, while not being a fan of the show in the beginning, as well as dealing with stuff like Teen Titans Go and the Powerpuff Girls reboot, I just decided to call this the reboot effect. To where in this case, a long-time show that has been famous for its sophisticated art style ends up becoming more comedy based and, has an art style that's more simplistic and easy to work with. In some cases, it is crippling and will destroy a show like it did for Teen Titans Go and Powerpuff Girls. But for Ben 10, it didn't do that much. Yes, it looks more simplistic and less sophisticated than the original show, but that doesn't bug me that much. I just feel a little indifferent towards it, I don't like it, but I don't hate it either. If I were to give it any kind of nitpicks, it would basically be that red shading that's kind of like in between the eyes and above the nose, or sometimes it's just like right smack dab in the middle of the face. It's, it's not noticeable for a lot of characters, but for characters like Gwen and Grandpa Max, it is very noticeable. And I think if they were to just tone that down a little bit, there wouldn't be any kind of afflicting thing that would be wrong with it. It kind of reminds me of the 2016 Powerpuff Girls reboot animation style. Very, very circular, very bouncy, it doesn't conflict that much, Yes, it is a huge shift and a huge game changer, but it's a game changer that I can honestly work with. The second aspect that I would wish to talk about is in this case, the characters, both heroes and villains alike. When we do a quick comparison, you notice that Ben from this series is kind of similar to Ben from the original series. Now, I know I said I was not a devoted follower to this series like some people viewing this video probably are, but I still did see, some of the original series on Saturday mornings. So based off of my memory, I can tell that both characters in this case are very similar, with some slight differences. One of the characters I feel who has changed the most in terms of the hero spectrum is Gwen in this case, and because Gwen has changed, the dynamic between Ben and Gwen has also changed in terms of this series. In the original series, Ben and Gwen were cousins, and they had this dynamic, that was basically them cracking jokes at each other every now and then, helping each other, and ultimately it being just this long-standing battle of wits. While in the other case for this new series, while they're still cousins and stuff like that, It's more of a brother and sister dynamic, not just seeing which one is wittier than the other, but in this case just seeing who's better than the other at basically everything, like a brother and sister would do, or in this case, like siblings would do in general. One character in this case that I feel, I'm not so sure has changed in terms of the hero dynamic is Grandpa Max. Grandpa Max in this case, before we find out that he was like a plumber and was involved in intergalactic stuff, seems like the Grandpa Max in this series, in which case he's just an old guy who's doing his thing while Ben and Gwen go out to do their thing, which was basically them saving the world. When we look at the villain spectrum, of course there were some villains that were remade for the sake of this series, so I can't really talk about them much, but one villain that I certainly can talk about is Dr. Animo. Now, for most of these series and stuff like that, a lot of people say that there are a lot of one-note villains. They just do one thing and they have one thing for them, but I would dare say that the Ben 10 reboot actually does it in a more sophisticated manner and gives their villains a little bit more depth in this case, just like they did with the original series. And in that case, I am talking about Dr. Animo. But in order to delve further with this guy in the series, we would have to move on to the third part, in which I talk about the plot to a very particular episode, and an episode of the Ben 10 reboot that I actually like. So the third and final aspect that I would like to talk about in this case is the plots for, the episodes in this case. Now, the plots in this case they're pretty simplistic and everything, There's a villain, the villain causes trouble, there's some kind of secondary conflict, and then after that, that secondary conflict gets resolved, which in this case is actually contributing to the downfall of the villain and everything. Examples of this would have to be like, I remember there was this episode when Ben and Gwen went to like this pool park and everything, and then Ben was like, hey, one of the people attending this park is a villain and we gotta stop her. And then Gwen was like, no, that's my best friend, so, and plus I don't think that she's a villain, so I don't believe you. Then all of a sudden, after that, Gwen realizes that she actually is a villain. Then after that, because that was resolved, they ended up teaming up to end up beating her. Another one was that Ben ended up on this place called Animal Farm, which in this case is like a parody of Animal Farm, where there were alpha mutants and beta mutants in this case. And the beta mutants, of course, they got bullied and had to do all the work, while the alpha mutants in this case, they were kind of in charge of everything. So Ben in this case was like, okay, we gotta stop them from, bullying you guys. You guys gotta stand up for yourselves, and then we can, take back the farm. So of course, Ben has them utilize their personal skills. And then after that, they end up teaming up, beat the boys. And then after that, Animal Farm is now taken over by the beta mutants. And, and equality ensues, basically. So that's what I mean by, there are primary problems. And then there are secondary problems. And if the secondary problems get taken care of, then the primary problem is taken care of. Or sometimes the primary problem gets taken care of first. And in turn, the secondary problem ends up being solved because the primary problem is taken out of the picture. So it changes every now and then. The specific episode that I wanted to talk about, though, was this episode where Ben and Gwen ended up going to Grandpa Max's old university in this case. And they end up finding this rare creature exhibit thing. And when they go to the rare creature exhibit thing, they end up realizing that it was a person there. And the mutant ends up going crazy and everything. And then because of that, it ended up seeing Gwen and it turns out like that it reminded the mutant of like his little sister or something like that, or his little sibling. And then after that, it kind of turned it back into humans, or it turned him back into a human. So because of that, Ben and Gwen ended up realizing that that if you can just reveal some kind of humanity or some kind of human aspect to it, then you can be able to, reverse the effects of this mutation. Then after that, they end up realizing that Dr. Animo was behind all of this. They find Dr. Animo. Animo tries blasting, Ben, trying to turn him into a mutant. The gun overloads, explodes on him. Animo is now a mutant. So they end up trying to figure out, what's the thing that connects Animo to his own humanity. And then they remember that there was a photo of him and his father, who was, said to be one of the greatest scientists in the world and stuff like that. So Gwen runs back to the trailer that Animo was living in, grabs the photo, shows it to him, and Animo softens up and becomes a human again. So in this case, it's showing that there is some kind of lore or background story going on with Dr. Animo. It's not like Teen Titans Go or Powerpuff Girls, to where it seems like that there's these very one-note characters. This Ben 10 reboot in this case is at least treating its characters with some level of respect. It's showing that there is some kind of lore, some kind of story, some kind of reason why the heroes are the heroes and the villains are the villains. They justify the reasons why they do these things, unlike things like Teen Titans Go, to where they don't justify any reason at all, or Powerpuff Girls, to where if there is any justified reason, it's a poor reason. So I say that the Ben 10 reboot in this case does its characters and its plots certainly some justice. So if you can just look beyond the animation, there's always that second layer, which I feel is so much more satisfying. And I would urge you guys to at least give it some kind of a chance. So, in conclusion, what are my thoughts on Ben 10? And what do I expect from this series? Well, in terms of what I expect from this series, I'm expecting that there are a few more stories in this case that kind of delve into, or give some more lore behind these characters. I feel that they certainly did Dr. Animo some justice here. And Dr. Animo was a character that I know was, very relevant in the original series. So I'm hoping that Animo, and I think Spellcaster was his name, I really hope that they give those characters that, that seem like very dark, very threatening characters, I hope they give them a little bit more of like a lore behind them, some more levels, some more layers to them, if you will. And even for the smaller, minute characters, I hope that they do something like that as well, because any chance to expand on and make this story have more meaning and depth behind it, the better. I certainly encourage that. The Ben 10 reboot is doing something that the other two reboots before it have failed to do, and that was pay some homage or show some respect to the show that they were rebooting. Animation wise, it seems a little more simplistic, but yes, sometimes in story it's a little more simplistic as well, but in terms of characters and growing and development, they're doing it right. They're actually doing the right thing here. So, and yeah, there are times where it seems like that they kind of missed the mark, but it's a show, sometimes you're gonna miss the mark. I'm pretty sure they missed the mark with the original Ben 10 as well. So I highly advise that you give this a chance. Don't go around just, squatting and shitting all over this review, or not this review, but the show, just because it's a reboot. I mean, you can shit on this review if you want. I'm pretty sure this isn't the best one out there. But all in all, this is a pretty good show. I like it. I like what they're doing here, and I hope that if they decide to reboot anything else, that they do exactly like what the Ben 10 reboot did. At least learn about the show, show some kind of respect to it, and give the characters layers. I mean, if the original show had characters with depth and personality, give this reboot characters with depth and personality. So, my verdict here is that Ben 10 gets a pass. Unless, I have to do a round 2. If you guys do want a round 2 of this video, let me know. But I probably won't do it until sometime around the end of this year, when the Ben 10 reboot has been fleshed out a little bit more. I know in the UK they've had more of a chance to do it. So whatever happens here in the United States, I'll watch it. And that's pretty much that. So in this case, that is the end of my review. If you liked what you heard, you know what to do. Subscribe, follow all the links in the description, check out Rying.com, and ultimately donate to the Patreon. If you want to buy a GrandOwlGaming shirt just to promote me, in a silent way, that's cool too. If not, well then, you guys are really missing out. This is GrandOwlGaming saying goodbye and stay gold, everyone.